Well, hi, my name's Greg and welcome to Chapter 4 in my 1949 P3 Rover restoration story. Today I thought I'd just cover the work that I've done on the horns on my P3 Rover. I guess that seems like an unusual part of a car to sort of base a restoration chapter on. But I think the P3 Rover's horns are worthy of a chapter. They kind of serve two functions on a P3. I think they work as horns and make a noise like any other car horn does, but they're also very decorative, and they're situated, actually bolted to the front of the car, so they're very much on show. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this episode, and over to the show now. In this photo, I'm just focused in on the horns at the front of my P3 Rover. This shot would have been taken shortly after I bought the car, and I brought it home and cleaned it. As you can see, one of the horns is missing a bit at the front. Unfortunately, during the trip from Snowtown to Adelaide, that piece fell off, so I'm not expecting I'll ever be able to find it again. But also, as you can see from this shot, the horns are mounted right at the front of the car in quite a prominent position. So as I mentioned in the intro, they do sort of have a decorative function as well. This is a close-up of one of the horns just before I was about to take it off the car. As you can see, the chrome work very heavily pitted, and also what I refer to as the trumpet section. That is the section right at the front of the horn. That's pretty beaten up as well. This is the other horn on my car. And as I mentioned earlier, it's missing a bit. Fortunately, after a fair bit of searching around, I did manage to find some reproduction trumpet sections for these horns from a supplier in England called Meteor Spares. So after removing the horns from my car, I began dismantling them and just sort of working out what work needed to be done. As you can see, there's a fair bit of sort of surface rust on the internal parts of the horn. Right into the internals of the horn now. I'm not sure what you'd call this bit. It's like a sort of like a cymbal. It's a I think a fairly thin piece of sheet steel that vibrates when the horn is actuated and makes the noise. As you can see, covered in rust, but I did manage to clean them up pretty well. The horns were fastened to the car by these brackets. This one is not in too bad a shape. The other one is a bit more rusty. Okay, I'm working on the horns on my P3 Rover now. I've got them pretty well disassembled. At this stage, apart from taking them apart, I've cleaned up a lot of the rust off the component bits. There's this bit in the centre of the horn which vibrates and makes the noise. That was covered in rust. I've cleaned it up fairly well. Cleaned up all the sort of oxidation off the surface of the bottom part there. I've stripped off all the paint, which was in fairly poor condition on the bottom housing. I've stripped off all the surface rust on this top part of the horn. Next job is really to do two things. I'll just focus on this little bit. Oops, there we go. There's a lot of little screws like that which hold the horn housing together. As you can see, it's a round-headed bolt. I don't know if you can see on the undersurface there, it's square. Where it slots into a square section on the bottom of the housing. A lot of those, well, not a lot of those, but a few of those bolts have been replaced just with a hexagon head bolt. As you can see on this bracket, I've got a hexagon head bolt on that side and a nice original round head bolt on the other side. So the work I'm going to do is to reproduce the original round-headed bolts, and I'm also going to reproduce these brackets, which are a little bit too rusty for my liking. Here we're just taking part of the original bracket, which was made in sort of 3 layers, which I'm not quite sure why they would have done it that way. But basically I've chosen some material which is equivalent to the 3 layers. So I just use one of the original pieces and use that as a template. I'll put some marking glue on the sheet of steel, so as I scribe around the original piece, I get a really clear line which I can cut to later on. So hopefully should work alright. Well, I'll need to don my trusty reading glasses for this job, because something strange has happened to my eyes over the years. They used to work so well. Anyway, here we go, we'll start out the bandsaw. I'll just cut around the line here. That's just about finished now. Probably about as good as I'm going to get it on the bandsaw. But from here I'll just do the finishing with a hand file. Now for the next one. Well, here's the finished version of the brackets. After cutting out the shape on the bandsaw, I finished it off just with hand filing. I made a insert as a packer, a round one on both ends there, and then there's another packer that I've made that goes at the back end there. All up, pretty happy with the finished result. Also made some special screws. It's a little hard to see that perhaps, but they're the screws that hold the horn together, and the longer ones hold the horn bracket onto the horn. They were fairly tricky to make, the sort of round head and square on the underside. Here I've got a photo of the reproduction brackets that I've made in a fairly advanced stage. I've also got what I refer to as the blanks for the special screws that I'm making that hold the horn together. So what I've done at this stage with my blanks is using a stainless steel bar, I'd turn these up and then put a thread on them. I threaded them with what's known as a BA thread, which stands for British Association. So that's really just a replica of what was there originally. After turning up the blanks, I made a fixture that allowed me to mount the screw blanks in this 3-jaw chuck, and I'll give a little bit more detail of the machining process in the next shot. Now I've got my screw blanks sort of mounted into a fixture that I made. The fixture is in turn held in a 3-jaw chuck. The 3-jaw chuck is in turn bolted to a device called a rotary table. I'll explain a little bit more about the rotary table in a minute. So to produce this square section, what I needed to do was to machine first a flat section, then rotate the workpiece exactly 90 degrees, machine another flat section, turn it 90 degrees, machine another flat section, and so on and so forth until you end up with a square. So by using the rotary table, it's a device that allows me to do what's known as an indexing operation, where we're turning the workpiece a set amount. Here are the special screws in a almost finished state. After I'd machined that sort of square section that I referred to in the previous shot, it was back to the lathe to machine the top end of the screw to a nice round profile. They're looking pretty good at this stage. I think I had to make 4 long ones and 8 short ones. I've skipped ahead a fair bit here to show you a shot of the horns in their final assembled state. To get to this point, I finished off the bits that I was making, painted them up, and I'll explain the rest of the work in the remaining shots. I think I mentioned earlier in the video that I saw some reproduction parts from Meteor Spares in England. So I sourced the 2 trumpet sections that you see on the front of the horns here, and also the flywire mesh that goes in the middle, and also there's a special sort of long screw that holds that whole trumpet section on, and then a nice little countersunk chrome screw that holds the dome section of the horn on. So I managed to get all those parts from Meteor Spares, which was really handy. Here you can see one of my reproduction brackets and some of the reproduction special screws that I made. Very happy with the end result. My painting's not fantastic, but probably good enough. You can also see that I've had what I refer to as the dome section of the horn re-chromed. If you again cast your mind back to some of the shots at the beginning of this show, the chrome was in pretty bad shape. Looking very nice now. I had them re-chromed by an electroplater here in Adelaide called A-Class Metal Finishes, and they seem to live up to their name. I've sort of skipped over some of the work that I did inside the horn, but if you recall earlier in the video, there's the sort of rusty internal parts that I cleaned up. So after I cleaned them up, I painted all those parts up in rust priming paint. There wasn't much other work to do. Electrically, the horn seemed to be in actually pretty good shape. This will be the final shot in this chapter of my P3 Rover restoration project. I'm just going to store these finished horns away in a shoebox for a while, and then I won't actually put them back on the car until after I've got body work done and the respray done on the car. So putting them back on will be one of the sort of final finishing touches, which I'm very much looking forward to. I hope you've enjoyed this show, and stay tuned for the next chapter. I'm just going to store these horns away in a shoebox until such time as I've had the body work done on the car and the respray done, and then putting the horns back on will be one of the final finishing jobs, which I'm very much looking forward to. Hope you've enjoyed this chapter, and stay tuned for the next episode.